Hello everybody, and welcome to the Sam's Report. Today is September 9th, 2016, but I'm actually recording this on September 8th. I've got to be traveling during the time of the normal recording, and so I wanted to make sure and have something to go up live then. And so here we are. I'm actually traveling to a wedding that's out of town, and that's why I cannot do the show during the normal hour. So for those of you who typically watch live, I do apologize. We should be back with regularly scheduled programming next week. And for those of you who've never watched live, we do it every Friday around 11 a.m. Eastern time, and there's a chat room, and there's a whole bunch of people joining in, and it's a lot of fun. But 11 a.m. Friday is when it's usually going live. But let's just dive right in, shall we? Even though it was a shorter week, still a lot going on. Thurrott World first. We posted up kind of an update to the Thurrott Premium stuff. We didn't get comments launched this week. Actually, they're not going to launch this week, I'm almost positive. Based on some actually, not bugs or anything, the functionality is all done and it's looking great. But what we wanted to add, which we didn't initially plan for, are social login. You like click the Twitter button to log in, click Facebook to log in. It really just gives a better experience for the comments, and we want to try to make the transition from Discuss over to the new platform as easy as possible, and we really think that is going to be a barrier for some people, so we kind of delayed things. Not even really delayed, just we wanted to make sure that that functionality was locked down and in place before we went live with the new comments. So for those of you who asked where they were, that is exactly where they are. The daily podcast with Paul and I that we will be doing is going to be starting here very soon. We're making good progress. No official dates yet, but once we get everything locked down, you'll definitely hear it right away because we're totally pumped about doing this. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be every single day, at least every single day that we can, Monday through Friday, to the best of our ability. And maybe we should run a little counter to see how many days consistently we can do it in a row. Because things like traveling, like Ignite, for example. Ignite is, 2 weeks away? 3 weeks away, whatever that is. That's like a perfect example. Paul and I are both going to be traveling. Well, it's great that we can do things together. Hauling all that equipment to Ignite can be a pain in the butt. So we're going to have to try to be creative and figure out how to do those sort of things. This week was shorter in the US. Well, not technically shorter, but the work week was shorter by 1 day. Monday was a holiday here in the United States, which accounts for a kind of slower beginning of the week. But there still was a lot going on. Some big news drops about the Surface hardware for the month of October and all that good stuff. And the best news of week of all that impacts none of you is that my home internet is finally fixed. That got fixed actually during the Apple keynote. It was great. It was lovely. I now have 300 down, 75 up, and it makes life a lot easier for podcasting because uploading these files, for just, fun fact, an average sized file of the Sam's Report, the video is about 1.5 to about 1.75 gigs. And so it takes a good 20 minutes, half hour to upload to YouTube. So I'm really going to be curious to see if, with the faster connection, if it's going to upload faster, to see whether or not YouTube puts sort of a limit on how fast you can upload. But, that's for me to deal with, not for you to worry about. But where that really plays into effect is when Paul and I are doing this every single day, and we're trying to upload it to our CDN, right? Speed issues. All right, let's dive in. So what's going on this week? Diving in actually to last month, Windows 10 for the month of August actually had 23% of 23% of the market share, and so that's actually pretty good. So that's we're getting close to that. 1 in 4 PCs is running Windows 10, and this is all PCs, by the way, connected to the internet. And so again, it is a survey, but this comes from NetShelter or NetMarket, whatever it is, Net Market Share. There it is. NetShelter is an old advertising company I used to work or deal with at Newen. Net Market Share, and they're pretty well respected. They've got a very large sample size. So when they say they've about 23% of machines connected to the internet are running Windows 10, totally believe them. Windows 7 remains flat, just a shade under 50%. But Windows 10 growing at 23%. I do think their growth is going to slow here a little bit, mostly because the free upgrade offer is now gone. So that's obviously going to impact some people. But where their big growth is actually really going to come from is actually just new devices, right? OEMs kick out a new machine and it's got to run Windows 10. Intel and AMD announced new chips, and those new chips do not support Windows 7, which realistically, let's just be honest here. Nobody's going to run Windows 8 voluntarily, at least for the vast majority. I know as soon as I said that some reader will email and say, you know what, I like Windows 8 and I'm not upgrading to 10. That's fine, good for you. But for the vast majority of people, it's either 7 or 10. And with hardware now not being able to run Windows 7, at least supported from that aspect, it's really going to kind of push people to Windows 10. And if you're buying a new PC, it's coming with Windows 10, whether or not you really like it. So that's really going to be the big driver. My gut tells me that the enterprise is still going to be considering considerable lag. I honestly realistically think we're probably another 2 years away before we see like really hardcore enterprise adoption. I'm talking like the Procter and Gamble's, the Kroger's, the Walmarts of the world, of those guys actually moving to Windows 10 in full. Remember, they might say we're starting the migration, and I guarantee as soon as they do, Microsoft will put out a PR and be like, hey, look, these large companies are doing it, but it's going to take them a very long time to actually get on fully to the platform. So that's where potential growth could come from, at least in the long term. But in the short term, new devices is what's going to be primarily fueling, because who's going to pay to upgrade Windows 10 now when they had a free year to do it and they didn't? So there you go. It was 22.99% is what was officially reported, but that was also for the month of August. We're a couple days in, a week into September, so it's pretty safe to say at least 23%. And I'm going to be real curious to see if we get up to that magical 25% in the month of August or September. So that is Windows 10 market share. What else is going on? There was no Windows Insider build this week, even though technically this week is not over yet. Microsoft Donna actually said, hey, there's no build this week. What they're doing is they're making some upgrades on the back end, and I'm curious to see if this is going to have any changes on the Insider program, like if they're going to speed things up or what their real plan is here. Or is this really just, hey, we're just putting in new hardware and pulling the old stuff out, so we gotta, we can't flight anything, as they typically call it. So I'll be curious to see what is actually going to come of this and what they kind of have up their sleeves. But no Insider build this week. Look for that to resume next week. So it sounds like there is a build already planned for next week, but that is this week. I think everybody will be okay without a build for this week. Big news actually out of the Skype team. Big news. This is really huge. Scooped up by, MS Power User, formerly Windows or whatever, it doesn't matter. MS Power User. Got some information that Skype is actually building a Slack competitor. So there was a rumor or some insider information, whatever you want to call it, a little bit ago, that Microsoft was approaching Slack for about $8 billion. I might be off on that figure, but essentially the deal did not work out. Microsoft did not get internal support, actually, I think is where it got killed. And so they never approached Slack. And their kind of remarks to this was, hey, we're going to build something internal. We've got the technology. We've got the people to do it. Let's do it ourselves. And what it looks like is going to be called Skype Teams, or, they could rebrand it at any time, but I believe it's going to be part of the Skype platform. And if you know what Slack is, it's essentially the same thing, but in the Skype world. So this will be really interesting. I'm actually kind of excited to use this, even though I rail on Skype all the time. Hopefully they're starting fresh here and they're going to do this right. And if they do, I think it's going to be really powerful, mostly because there's already 300 million people, monthly active users, already using Skype. So by using that same, at least like mechanism to get people into the application, it should be pretty easy. It's not like Slack where you have to get everyone into it. Everybody's already there. So it's got threaded comments. It's got the rooms. It's got bot support. It's got GIFs or GIFs, whatever you want to call them. It's Slack, but Microsoft, right? So I'm really interested in this. I want to see if Microsoft can do this right and actually, kind of say, hey, and see them just kind of go, hey, we can actually build this kind of software, because Slack is eating Microsoft's lunch. Now, granted, these types of applications, I've heard time and time again, work better in the small business environment, small team. And ironically, I know people at Microsoft who actually use Slack. So go figure, Microsoft is actually already paying Slack for those accounts. But it's a messaging, it's a productivity tool, it's a collaboration environment, and people tend to love it. And so Microsoft is going whole hog on this and building their own, and I don't know when it's going to be released. I wish I did. I hope that it's soon. At least I hope they kick out a beta here pretty quick. They've got an internal video floating around. You can actually visit, I believe it's teams.skype.com, and you can see like the login place. But unless you have an at Microsoft account, good luck. If you do have an at Microsoft account and you do get to log in, shoot me a message. Snapchat bdsams, Twitter bdsams, whatever, and we'll work it out. I'm just curious to kind of see how far along the application is at this point and when Microsoft thinks they're going to get it out, because clearly at this point the clock is ticking, because Slack, every time somebody pays for Slack, that's money Microsoft isn't getting, and clearly they want to own the productivity space. So Skype Teams is coming. We don't have a release date. I wonder if they'll talk about it at Ignite. I don't know if that's really a place where they're going to announce this kind of stuff, but this seems to be a big deal. So maybe we'll see it in a keynote. Who knows? Who knows? Microsoft always keeps us on our toes. They're always working on crazy things, and Skype Teams appears to be one of them. So if you know anything, let me know. But yeah, Skype Teams coming soon. The other thing I want to dive into here is I got pinged on Twitter, and I apologize because I cannot remember who it was. Started complaining about Microsoft abandoning health. And I was like, you know what? This is actually kind of an interesting topic. And so there's probably going to be a post on Thurrott here. I'm actually waiting, to be honest, for a comment back from Microsoft on the topic. But okay, so Microsoft, it was in October of, I believe, 2014. They launched Health. And if you remember Health, it's like they made this big thing. It's like this platform. It's where you can dump all of your Microsoft band. And they were talking about how anybody can tap into their health ecosystem and use the health application environments that are on, iOS and all that good stuff, and Android and Windows Phone and Windows 10. But earlier this year, and I can't remember if Microsoft officially said this, but it's all but known that Microsoft killed the production of the Band 2. So there's no Band in production. If you go to Best Buy, they don't even have it. I was searching their site. All they have are extra cables and little screen protectors. And so the Band 2 has been discontinued, no longer being made. Which kind of is odd that we haven't heard anything about a Band 3. And we'll talk about this later, that there's really no rumors yet about a Band 3. We know that there were quality issues with the Band 2, especially like literally the rubber band on the Band 2 was breaking after significant use. I know many people who have had problems with this. And so there's no Band 3 rumors, and the Band 2 is done, so they're not adding anybody to this environment. Now, they are still updating the health app, so from that perspective, like the Android one, I think was just updated in September, and the iOS one was updated recently. The other kind of odd things, the health blog, though, hasn't had any posts since June, and while that doesn't sound like that's too long ago, if you actually look at the cadence of their posts, they were actually doing like 3 to 4 posts per month, just about, I looked back, I think, to roughly January. And they had all these posts up through June, and then all of a sudden they stopped. And so I don't know what's going on. And I asked Microsoft candidly, I'm like, hey, I want to write a post about how the future of the health is kind of foggy, because without the band, like being the hero device, I don't see Fitbit and Jawbone and all these guys, even though technically they can, why would they champion Microsoft's app over their own, especially Fitbit? And obviously the Apple Watch is not tying into this stuff. So it's like, what is the future of the health app and that health platform? Now, don't confuse it with Health Vault, which is another Microsoft product, very similarly named, but not quite the same. I'm just specifically referring to the health app and that kind of stuff. So interesting. I don't really know where Microsoft is going with this. And I was hoping they would have a comment to me back today, but they haven't. It's kind of a crazy week everywhere this week. And if anybody knows anything, again, about what's going on with the health app and the band and that scenario, I would love to know, because there's a lot of people who really like the band. Like, it's not, honestly, ignoring the fact that they had some rubber issues, it's not a bad device. It's more accurate than my Apple Watch when it comes to step counting and running by a decent enough margin that I go running with this instead of an Apple Watch. So I know the band had, and it seemed like it was selling pretty well. Like, I didn't get the feeling that the band was just like a ghost town environment type device. I saw them decently, much more pervasive than the Lumias. So I can't imagine that was the problem, and I don't quite know. I hope they build a Band 3. I think there's going to be a lot of people disappointed if they don't, but I've also been hearing kind of whispers and nothing really to confirm on that Microsoft doesn't like being in the hardware business, but I don't know if that's completely true. I think there's certain segments they may not like to be in, but there's certain segments they have to be in. For example, Xbox. They're not going to give up Xbox at this point, considering how well, at least in my opinion, I think it's been doing. And they're not just going to hand everything over to Sony. Plus, that would be terrible for the consumers, because obviously we need competition. But yeah, health, who knows? Well, Microsoft knows. Hopefully I'll know soon. And I'm based on kind of the kickback I got from Microsoft when I got this. I'm really crossing my fingers that we're not going to get like a comment that says we're not going to comment on anything at this time, like that type of stuff. I really hope they kind of just be candid about this. And I don't know. I don't really know. But that's the health stuff. That's what's going on. That's what's going on in my wheelhouse and things I'm kind of diving into. And we'll see what happens here. Other big things that happened this week. Actually, Google dropped a new version of Chrome with material design. And this is kind of a big deal, actually. So Chrome, whatever, it's like Chrome 53 or something like that. Just make sure you're running the latest version of Chrome and you'll have it. You can tell because it looks different and there's fancy new animations. But one of the things that's new about it is actually the additional battery life. Chrome web browser for Windows obtains about 2 hours of additional battery life on the same hardware compared to a year ago. So that's a big improvement. And you look at that and you're like, holy cow, 2 extra hours versus the hardware a year ago. On the same hardware as a year ago, that's pretty impressive. Now, what they didn't talk about is they did not compare it against Edge. And we all know that Edge was making a big push saying, hey, look, it gets a lot better battery life than Chrome. And so we got to read between the lines a little bit, but if they're not going to announce the figures against Edge, I'm guessing that they did the comparison and lost. Why else wouldn't they, right? If it came out and said, hey, we get the exact same or we get better battery life than Edge, why wouldn't they tout that? I can't, they're not like so arrogant that they don't want to mention the word Edge like in a blog post or anything. At least I don't think so. I mean, good Lord, Google, if that's true, you got some other issues there. But if you're a Chrome user, you're getting better battery life. That's just kind of the way it is. Compared to the older hardware. From what it seems like, if you want the best battery life, run Edge on your laptop. That's kind of the message it seems like they're sending. I might be crazy. I don't think so, but that's the way I interpret this information. But for now, though, I will continue to at least use Chrome on my desktop because battery life doesn't necessarily matter to me on that. On my Surface Book, that's a whole different scenario, and I think I might be using Edge on that at least to make sure I'm getting the best battery life possible, especially when I'm traveling like this weekend. Why wouldn't you want the best battery life? And while Edge is a great browser, Chrome does have some little bit better features, and I think it's a little bit more polished. But at the end of the day, Edge is good enough that you can substitute it for Chrome without any major concerns, at least at this time. So there's that. So big bombshell today, actually. Well, today being when I recorded it. This podcast I recorded obviously on the 8th, late at night. So Mary Jo dropped a big bombshell today, and this is things that I've been hearing floating around. I mentioned a couple times in this podcast. I was hearing some stuff going on this fall. I couldn't quite nail it down. It looks like Mary Jo beat me to the punch. But I love Mary Jo, so good for her. It looks like she beat me to the punch. And she's putting in stone that she's hearing that there is a Surface event, or at least a hardware event, I think is a better way to call it, in late October. And so what it's believed to be is the Surface All-in-One is going to be the big show pony for this event. And so, yeah, this is big news. And Mary Jo has a very, very good track record. So I completely believe her. And there's actually a specific reason why I really believe her. So back in the spring, I had heard about Cardinal. Cardinal is a code name, I believe, of a Surface device. Is what is the information that I was told. A source said, hey, dig in, look for Cardinal. That's kind of like the big thing. And that's really all the information that I had. And I kept it on the back burner. And then Mary Jo is like, hey, she wrote it in a post. She said the code name of this device is actually Cardinal. And I was like, boop, there you go. Puts all the pieces together. And so we had not really talked ever, I don't think, about this stuff. And so when she came up with Cardinal independently of me, that's when I was like, yeah, this is legit. Not that I want to believe her anyways, because she is Mary Jo, great track record. But Cardinal kind of solidified it for me. Even more information, and I've said this several times. So DigiTimes was actually the first to report this. They actually said earlier this year that Microsoft was going to launch a new Surface device, and I believe they said Surface Computer, and they specifically said Q3 2016. Now, we all know DigiTimes has a terrible track record with Apple rumors. That is true. There's no question about that. But I still had the conviction. DigiTimes was the first site that said Microsoft is building a tablet. And this was what the tablet they were talking about was the Surface RT. So this is go way back, 5 years now? And they were the first one to nail that rumor. At the time, obviously, DigiTimes had so much noise up. They've done better lately, but yeah. So DigiTimes actually earlier this year said Surface all-in-one, Surface computer-like device coming in October. Now Mary Jo is saying it with the code name that I knew but did not know the full details of. And yeah, so there we go. That's going to be really exciting. See, it looks like it's going to be late October, which makes sense to some things I had been hearing. Again, just go listen to some previous podcasts and you'll hear me mention that stuff. And so this is awesome. This is really fun. This gives us something to look forward to. So there's other things that are going on too. So what about Surface Book refresh? I have heard, and I've reported many times, and Mary Jo is reiterating, and I think she's reported it many times, the Surface Book 2 and Surface Pro 5 still not slated until 2017. Like that's been kind of the thing we've been running with. But the interesting thing is will Microsoft refresh the internals, right? We got a Surface Book. They could swap out Skylake, which we all know Microsoft cannot get far enough away from fast enough. Would they put Kaby Lake in there? It's an interesting question, right? Intel has already said they're shipping Kaby Lake, but many people like myself included, thought that Kaby Lake wouldn't really arrive until kind of like the CES timeframe. So Microsoft, obviously they have good deals with Intel because, hey, they got the Atom Cherry Trail and the Surface 3 before anybody else in the market. So I guess it's feasible that they do get the Kaby Lake chip in the Surface Book before anybody else. Maybe that's what they're going to run with. Intel might be throwing them a bone too by saying, hey, here's these new chips. We promise they're good. And then just upgrade that. And mind you, it's a decent upgrade, but it's not like some colossal upgrade. So this could be a chip bump for the Surface Book. Now, this is not the first time Microsoft has done this. I believe it was the Surface Pro 2. And now I don't think they changed like architecture, but I know that I think it was the Surface Pro 2 that they actually did release a later version that had a slightly spec bumped chip. So this wouldn't be completely unprecedented for Microsoft to do something like this. It has been done in the Pro line before, and I'm pretty sure it was the Pro 2. So yeah, let's just kind of see what's going on with that. The other things that are kind of void, and I still have not heard anything, is Surface 3 and Band 3. This goes back to the health stuff that I was talking about earlier. We've no rumors of a Band 3, no rumors of a Surface 3 at this event either. And for those of you holding out for a Surface phone, more bad news. Mary Jo is saying, hey, she's thinking it's not going to come until much later. I think this really revolves around their strategy of Windows Phone, and they're trying to figure out what they're actually going to do here. Now, don't take this as that they're abandoning it. They're going to continue to add features, continue to upgrade Windows 10 Mobile, but just putting out simply new hardware with the Surface line, I don't think it's strong enough yet. I don't think it's Surface is a good brand. Don't get me wrong. Surface is a great brand. I love the book. But I don't think just simply slapping the name Surface on a premium piece of metal is actually going to make Windows 10 Mobile sell in any sort of volume. I realistically believe that. So, yeah, that, who knows? Well, Panos probably knows, but that's kind of, yeah. And that event, again, just to reiterate, late October is what it looks like it's going to be. So shifting gears here for a second. It's impossible to go through this week. Apple had a huge event. I'm not going to reiterate all the specs of the iPhone. You can go find those on millions of different sites. But they do essentially look like iPhone 6 and iPhone 6s devices. They probably could have called it the SE and nobody would have thought anything different. But the big differences, right, are the new camera. They killed the headphone jack, which I can't say I love, but I can't say it. I don't know. It's going to be dongles everywhere, and they're going to probably make a ton of money. They created AirPods, which are wireless earphone things for the very audacious and ballsy price of $160. So that's $80 an earpod, AirPod, whatever the hell they're called. If you lose one of those, I don't even know if you can buy just one. So, and I think they get 5 hours of battery life. Again, that's not great for somebody who's listening. Like, I've taken flights that are longer than 5 hours. I don't know. I don't think those things are, I don't think those, wireless AirPods, or whatever they're called, are going to sell exceptionally well, but there they are. So that's what's going on. iPhone 7. One thing that Apple did announce during the event, or actually it was after the event, they said that they're not going to release the sales figures of the phone like they've traditionally done. Every year after the phone has gone on sale, I think since the beginning, they've always released the pre-sale or the sales numbers, right? They say the first week in sales, record sales of the phone. And so they are not doing that this time, mostly because they already know that, hey, well, this is a good phone. It's not like a blockbuster, and they're probably not going to break their records from last time. Interesting enough is that the hype is already building that the next iPhone, because it's going to be the 10th anniversary, I believe, of the iPhone, is going to be like a massive change. And so that's kind of crazy to think that at this point, everyone's like, okay, we just know this one's going to be like meh, and we're waiting on the next one. So that's probably going to impact sales quite a bit too. And the one thing that I'll bring up too from the keynote, Apple said that iWork is popular. Just let that marinate for a little bit. Many assume that iWork had been given like the old Yeller treatment, except for Keynote, the actual app that's their PowerPoint, had been given the old Yeller treatment. But so they brought out and talked about iWork, and it was they were promoting collaboration is now possible. Two people work on it, and everyone's going to say, hey, Google Docs and Office 365, and I've had this forever. This is really awkward, Apple. Welcome to like 2014. And then they're like, yeah, and iWork is really popular too. And it's like, ooh, wow. It's the biggest lie of their whole thing. But anyways, you can go back and watch Tim Cook and company do all that stuff if you really want. Other things that touched the Microsoft world this week, Sony announced 2 new PlayStations. 2 of them. One of them had leaked significantly. The PS Slim, it's just a $299 cheaper version, smaller, the PS4. But what's really interesting is the PlayStation 4 Pro. And basically it offers better VR experiences, 4K streaming, but interesting enough, Sony's PlayStation 4 Pro cannot play back 4K Blu-ray discs like the Xbox One S can that I have sitting right back here. But it's got a beefier graphics chip, and it's a professional. It's the Pro. It's a better. So what's really interesting enough about this is not the specs of the device. That now that Sony's kind of got this fragmented, and fragmented is probably not a fair word to use because it'll play all the games and they're forward and backwards compatible and blah blah blah. Is that Microsoft and Sony are both taking this approach that consoles are no longer locked to like an 8-year refresh cycle. They're now putting out like more higher spec consoles at a faster rate. They're really just turning these things into like the PC kind of scenario, right? Where you're spending a couple $100 every couple years to make sure you have the latest and greatest. And so that's So that's what's going on. And the PlayStation 4 Pro, which is going to be the most powerful current gen console, is coming out this holiday season, which raises the point of how much of a jump is the Scropio. We know that the Scropio is going to be really powerful, but how much more powerful than the Sony PlayStation 4 Pro is it going to be? And now Sony is very clearly calling this a PlayStation 4 Pro because they don't want to call it the PlayStation 5, because they clearly must not think that it's a large enough jump in performance and enhancements to warrant that naming schematic. So we now have the Scropio versus the Pro 4, or 4 Pro, sorry, bad habit there. Not even a bad habit, it's a good habit. That's a good machine, the Pro 4. But it'll be interesting to see the Scropio versus 4 Pro, because the Scropio isn't coming out until a year later. And many are kind of thinking that the Scropio is like a generational type device, right? It's like the next gen of gaming, as most people refer to it. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, the thing is that Sony is going to have a year head start on a higher power gaming console. But my gut kind of tells me that the Scropio is going to be a lot more powerful than the PlayStation 4 Pro. Like, it's going to be significantly more powerful. So maybe that's not really, I don't know if it's necessarily fair to compare them at this point, but we don't know enough about the Scropio to say what it is or isn't at this time. And we really don't know what Sony has, but I can't imagine that Sony's going to come out next year and say, hey, here's the PlayStation 5. I know you just bought the 4 Pro, but here's the 5. I don't really kind of see that happening. So kumbaya to Sony. Good job to them. And gaming competition is the best thing for all of us. And just like the Chrome, when companies compete, the user wins. And so the fact that Sony is kind of beating Microsoft to the punch to have the most powerful console out currently is good. Right now, Microsoft has to respond. Don't get me wrong, the Xbox One S is a very capable machine. I'm not going to buy a 4 Pro. I'm just not going to buy one. So Xbox One S is still a great console. No shame in owning one or buying one, but we'll see what Scropio has in store for it. So, been a kind of crazy week, right, guys? I mean, we had a PlayStation event, we had an Apple event, we have Surface stuff. Things are just kind of like running off the rails lately, but that's kind of somewhat expected because we're getting dangerously close to the holiday shopping season. I know it's like nuts to think about, but we're just a couple months away from when people are going to like be going to the stores to buy up all the things that they're going to shove under the tree. And what we're going to see now is companies start to come out with their plans for the holiday shopping season, and Sony just dropped theirs. And so now we're starting to hear kind of rumors of what Microsoft has in store for the holiday shopping season. And don't be surprised to see more of this. And that's just the nature of being in early September. That's just the time of the year. So other kind of things that popped up in my world this week, I got some really good, I guess I shouldn't really call it really good, is that I've got some feedback saying, hey, they had the same issues. Very randomly, trying to copy content in Windows 10 just doesn't work. Like, you highlight something, hit Control C, go to the other app, hit Control V, and bam, nothing happens. Let me know if that's happening to you. It's definitely happening to me, and I can't reproduce it like consistently, but it seems like other people have the same problem. And that's really annoying because that's a very basic fundamental feature of Windows is copy and paste. And if that's not working correctly, then we're basically jumping back into what Windows Phone 7, Series 7, I think it was called at the time, before Mango, going into the Wayback Machine here. I think it was Windows Phone 7 Mango update that brought copy and paste functionality to Windows Phone. Holy cow. That's whew. Anyways, the insider tip of the week this week, guys. Next week when Microsoft pushes out a new build of Windows 10, they're running on a new provisioning system. So if you remember last time they went to Redstone 2, the RS2 ring or release branch, it took a while for stuff to come to your machine. And so that's going to happen again. So just be patient. Be very patient about getting the Windows 10 update or the insider build. And I'm the worst person to say this because I'm the least patient person on the planet. But keep in mind that the provisioning system, when they do it, is going to be new, which means everybody kind of has to be reintroduced to it, and it might take some time for everything to show up. So that is your Windows Insider tip of the week. Next week should be a lot of fun. It's the week before Ignite. Oh, no, it's not the week before Ignite. It's 2 weeks before Ignite. Yeah, because Ignite is 26th and 27th to 28th. I already know my plans. I'm actually flying in, Sunday morning, and I'm leaving late Wednesday evening. So, Ignite, I believe, runs the whole week, but that is when I will be there. Let me know if you're going to be there. We've already got some small little side meetups going on, and I'd love to meet up with some readers and listeners. And as always, guys, thank you for listening. I very much appreciate it, and have a great weekend.